care for me? Oh, darling, do you still care for me? Care for me, oh, darling. I have.
Is the music still going, dog? Oh, it's not okay, okay, okay. Okay, that was weird. I heard a lot of music coming out. What's up, everybody? How are we doing today? All right, so today's show, I'm gonna kind of hijack the show for the Colby J. Ryan show and talk about Lindsay Clancy as you guys have requested for a while. Now, again, I always proceed with caution, and I understand that this case has a lot of back and forth. Now, again, I'm just going to basically introduce this case to you as I'm learning about it, because again, I have not watched the trial. I have seen it about 3 or 4 times on YouTube that it is streaming. It might be streaming right as we speak. I saw it a little bit earlier and I have not watched it. So again, I like to be honest with where I am when it comes down to like my knowledge of a case, okay? Because to me, that's really important. What's up, everybody? What's up, Bran? And anyway, where I'm at is I'm at basically research level. I usually do this stuff before videos. I thought it'd be interesting to just do it today and do it together. So I hope that works for you guys. Basically, you guys told me about this story. I think I looked it up on one of our other shows. And when I feel that I have a perspective that I can give other people, that is when I feel that I will speak on something. And when I see, the first thing that comes to my mind is when I see this stuff is I still have the same thought process that I did for Lori, is how can anybody, no matter what state of mind that they're in, take the life of their own children? And then I saw when I was doing research that the claim is that Lindsay was under postpartum psychosis. So I did a little bit of research on that as well. And that is a very real thing. And so we're just going to kind of do this whole research part together, and then I'm going to give you my honest opinion. So this show's not going to have the sections as usual. This is just going to be that story. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is is this going to take me? Can you guys still see me? Hopefully this isn't going somewhere else. I know. And there's a lot of controversy around it. When I first jumped in, there was people saying that the husband is the one who did the whole thing. And it started to get really murky really quickly. And it became what most cases have, which is tons of theories. And, there's just a lot going on around this case. And again, I am learning as we go. So please take what I am giving you as opinion, not fact. And I am not going to try to pick some type of side or say anything. I am just doing the research with you. So first of all, so it says Lindsay is from Massachusetts. She's a former labor and delivery nurse who lived in Duxbury, and her husband, Patrick Clancy, and their 3 children, which was Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Cora is 5, Dawson's 3, and Callan's 8 months. Oh my gosh. Okay, I can do it. I get through it. This stuff just hurts to read. So on January 24th, 2023, all 3 children were strangled inside the family's home. Lindsay subsequently jumped out from the 2nd-story window in an apparent suicide attempt, but she survived and suffered severe spinal injuries and is paralyzed from the waist down. Her defense does not dispute that Lindsay was that Lindsay did kill the children, but it's important when understanding everything about this case. The dispute is over her state of mind. So again, if you look into postpartum psychosis, it's a real thing. A lot of parents and mothers specifically, your hormones are out of balance. And a lot of mothers have attempted to do something to the child because of the state of mind that they're in. And that is a real thing. But obviously, again, I don't have enough information. So let's continue. So Lindsay took Cora to the doctor's appointment. This is on the day that it happened. And so it was in 2023. She returned home and played outside in the snow when Cora and Dawson had sent pictures of the children to Patrick and her mother. That evening, Lindsay asked Patrick to leave the house for two things. She texted him about getting children's medication from CVS, and he was going to pick up takeout. So at roughly 5:15, Patrick left, and about 5:30, he was at CVS. He called Lindsay to clarify which medication to buy. She did not initially answer, but when he called back shortly afterward, she called him back shortly afterward. Patrick returned home approximately 6:09 p.m. He immediately noticed something was wrong. So he left at 5:15. At 5:30, he called, and then at 6:09, he came home. So it's fast. He immediately noticed something was wrong. This house was silent. He eventually went upstairs and found blood in the bedroom of the window. Lindsay was lying outside beneath the window, seriously injured. Out of the second story window, the children were discovered inside the home. Cora and Dawson died that night. Callan initially survived. Medical personnel were able to restart his heart, but he'd suffered a catastrophic brain injury. He died at Boston Children's Hospital on January 27th. Damn it. Gosh, man. Okay, so this is what Lindsay said happened after the incident. She said, this is one of the most important pieces of the entire case. On February 6th, while Lindsay was with a psychiatrist hired by her defense team, she spoke with Patrick. She told him she had experienced what she described as a moment of psychosis. According to the prosecutor's account that conversation, that Lindsay said she had heard a man's voice instructing her to kill the children and herself. Okay. Yes. Just so we're all clear. I'm not saying it's the husband. I'm saying that there is accusations being thrown at Patrick that he was involved or that he did something as a part of it. So we're just trying to lay all the foundation out from what I'm understanding and what I'm reading online and what I'm reading from your guys' comments as well. So just give me a second. We're basically doing this as we go together. So let's pause real quick and have the conversation about the voice. Now, number one, the voice is important because, again, a lot of people who end up doing things have an external voice that they refer to that causes them to do the thing. So it's weird because in my mind, it almost seems as if there's like a distance from the situation actually being their fault. And it's weird because if you really look into these cases, like, I hate to ever bring up my family and try to connect everything, but when you think about the fact that there's a spiritual thing, whether it's real or not, whether they heard a voice or whether they had that actual encounter with this entity or this voice, is that it is almost as if someone else is at fault, right? It almost in some way pulls and alludes from the fact that this person chose to actually do this. This voice told me, God told me, Satan told me, whatever they say, there's a third party. And again, it's very interesting that if you really listen, a lot of times people have this, not everybody, but a lot of the people who actually end up killing people say that there's some kind of third party voice. Patrick subsequently told investigators that Lindsay had never previously told him that she had heard voices or used the word psychosis. Now, again, I think it's very important to also say that psychosis is a very crazy word to use because it doesn't necessarily have, there's no real diagnosis for psychosis. It's an episode of psychosis, meaning you are out of your mind. There's really not a realm of psychosis, because if anybody had psychosis, it would be anything that you experience in that phase. So I don't know. That's interesting. But that fact has become extremely significant because the defense now argues that if Lindsay was suffering from postpartum psychosis. Interesting. Okay, so the mental health story before the killings. Lindsay didn't suddenly begin reporting psychiatric problems after her children died. There is a substantial documentation showing that her mental health had been deteriorated for months beforehand. Her symptoms reportedly included such things as severe anxiety, insomnia, depression, suicidal thinking, intrusive thoughts, fear about her ability to parent, and concerns about medication and their other side effects. Huh. That's interesting. Why? But why were you fearful of being a parent when you already were a parent of two other older children? Those are big age gaps to have. I mean, I guess you're not thinking straight if you were in that state, but you have a 5-year-old. It's just interesting to me. So by late December 2022, Patrick told police Lindsay had reported suicidal thoughts and thoughts of harming her children. She was seeking professional help. She was receiving a lot of psychiatric treatment. Okay, so she was receiving medication. That's interesting. Exactly. Let me stop also in that way. If there were voices, you don't have to act on what the voices say. That's the point. So even if you were having some experiences in this realm, which again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor, so I can't really say, but again, intrusive thought, voices in your head, whatever the case is, you don't have to actually do the thing. And again, this is so crazy because Sarah Henderson said the same exact thing. She had the same exact moment where voices told her to go and kill the children. So again, think about the logistics of that. If we actually try to use our logic brain in this one, which it doesn't really have a lot of logic, but to say if there is some kind of voice in your head to do something, you wouldn't necessarily have to follow through. So it's interesting. After the medication, so their medication issue is among the medications reported in her treatment history were drugs such as Zoloft, Prozac, Avitin, Advan, I can't say that, and Seroquel. I don't know what that is. I'd have to do a little more research on those things. And her defense argues that she was prescribed roughly a dozen or more psychiatric medications over a relatively short period. And with that treatment worsened an underlying condition rather than stabilizing her. This is what I've been getting at for a long time. I'm sorry. I really don't mean any disrespect towards anybody who's a psychiatrist who uses medication. But let me just be clear about something. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a personal example really quickly. So when I was in the worst part of my depression in life, and I was really having suicidal thoughts, I actually ended up going to a suicidal watch, whatever it's called, for a while. And the first thing that they want to do is get you on like antidepressants. And so I started taking them, and I didn't have like mental issues with it. It kind of just felt like flatlined me. Like I had no emotion almost. It just felt very flat. And I was actually having other like physical symptoms from taking it. And so I think it was Zoloft for about a couple weeks. And I finally got off of it. And I realized that the problem that I have is like when you're overdosing your medications, you are causing a lot more issues than you would think. And the problem is we're just shoving medication down people's throats. I'm sorry to say, but it just bothers me to death that that's the first answer to most people is here's this pill, this does this, this does this, this does this. There's got to be a problem when we stack that stuff up. And I just don't know why we're just so quick. I'm not saying the medication doesn't help. I have no issue with the medical community or think that those things can't be helpful. But I think what we're doing right now is we're just prescribing as fast as we can. Hey, this does this. You're depressed. Here's this. There's 3 different versions. Try this one, and this one. By the way, it might make you kill yourself. It might make you have psychosis. You might have heart failure, liver failure. You might want to hang yourself, but it might cure your depression too. So here's all these horrible side effects. Here's the risk, but here's the reward. You might not feel this way. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying. I don't know if you can take all of that at one time. That's just my personal opinion. You have to be really careful and really strategic when it comes down to medications. That's my biggest issue with the mental health culture right now. Is it just we're so quick to jump on stuff. Some people really excel so well on antidepressants just for a certain time or whatever the case is. But when you stack your body, oh man. We'll get into that another time. I don't want to go on a rant. Okay. So, and then they contend that she had undiagnosed bipolar disorder and postpartum psychosis, and that the antidepressants and the other medication changes contributed to her psychiatric destabilization. I don't have enough extensive understanding of what the postpartum, I know what postpartum depression is, excuse me. But the postpartum psychosis, I don't have enough information on yet. So we'll do a little bit more research on that too. But I know of the term. I haven't done extensive research on that. Okay, so this is interesting. She actually checked herself into a psychiatric hospital on January 1st, 2023, 23 days before this happened. She voluntarily admitted herself to McLean Hospital. She remained there until January 5th. That's really interesting. So she was having this was an ongoing thing, because didn't the husband just say back in 23 that she was having issues and that she was having thoughts of that? I'm just going to say this up front, okay? I hope this is helpful to anybody. But if the mom is in a place like that, I think the first thing you need to do is separate her from the children, because again, it is now about the children and her. So if I feel like if you heard from the mother of your children as a father that the mom is struggling with, like, I'm having these thoughts of unaliving the kids, the first thing you got to do is try to get as much help as you can. And first thing I would do is separate. That was just absolutely has to happen, because the children are at risk. Because again, if you're not in your right mind, you could go do something and that's it. It's permanent. So, yeah, let's keep going. So, according to the prosecution's earlier account, she was discharged without clinicals or, determining that she represented an immediate danger. So she passed the test. She was no longer a threat, so she was released. And again, in that scenario, at least what I experienced, is that you really just tell them how you're feeling. If you want to get out, you could get out. Let's just be honest. I was not dishonest because I didn't want to leave unless I felt like I was actually past it. The best thing that happened to me in the suicide hospital was the time factor, that everything kind of got eliminated. Now, again, this is the craziest thing ever. I was there. I was going through it. And on the TV in the meeting room that we had, where we're supposed to all join together, you don't have to, but I did all the activities. I was actively trying to like get out of the place I was in the rut. And in the TV room, before we all like started the meeting, I was sitting down and they did a commercial for the Netflix documentary in the suicide hospital. One of the reasons I was there. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like ducking my head. I was ducking my head because they were talking about it on the TV in front of everybody. I was like, someone's going to notice that it's me. It was so weird and so embarrassing. And it was so crazy to actively see one of the reasons that I was there. So anyway, I'm just saying that, but being in there, they check on you. You go and you have these conversations with the doctors and you go through these extensive lists, but you could just say, I'm fine. You're like, oh no, I'm good. I'm good. Like if you really wanted to get out. So you have to be as honest as possible. You really do. You do have to be honest. So the defense argues the woman knew something was seriously wrong, repeatedly sought help, entered a psychiatric hospital, received extensive treatment, and was still let go. Huh. Yeah, I've never told you guys that story. I didn't think about it till just now, but I forgot about that. That was probably one of the craziest things ever. I was like, I can't even get away from this. Why is it on the TV? Like, of all the things that could have been on the TV, was that so freaking nuts. Okay. Her internet searches are fascinating evidence. The jurors now see that Lindsay's digital history from before the killings, her searches are included as subjects to hallucinations, psychosis, suicide, psychiatric medication side effects, depression, and ways of dying. Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness. So I really am now like the biggest believer in the search history, because people are in the most intimate moment of their life doing their searches, right? So like when you're Googling stuff, you're not doing it for a crowd or whatever the case is. You're doing it by yourself. So if you're Googling certain things, it's crazy to me that you would be in that state of mind. So for me, this piece of evidence would immediately say she already was having some of these struggles. The problem is there's a lot of cries for help here. And the fact that she was still around the kids is just my number one thing. Again, I don't have enough information to make that judgment because I don't know what the scenario is. But just hearing how much pre-conversations there were about even hurting herself and then also hurting the kids, I really feel like leaving the kids even in the vicinity of her is a danger. But again, nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. I don't know. I don't want to prejudge. I don't have enough information yet. The prosecution uses some of these searches to establish suicidal thinking and potential planning. The defense can point to other searches, particularly those concerning of psychosis and hallucinations, as evidence that Lindsay herself realized something was abnormal happening to her psychologically. Okay, let's keep going. This is one of the reasons why the trial isn't so simple. Some evidence can plausibly be interpreted in completely different ways. Yeah, that's really true. Okay, this is interesting. I've been waiting for this one. That's probably true too. There's probably lots of different reasons. It's complex. I get it. It's complex. But again, if there's pre-signs, I don't know. If you're struggling that much and you're really thinking about hurting your kids, if you have the mental capacity, you should remove yourself from that situation as much as you can, no matter how much you love your kids, until you can get to a more stable place. I don't know. It's my best. That's the best thought that comes to me, because the kids don't deserve to lose their lives, even if you're having an episode. If you got to that point and you're thinking that way, you've got to be the one, if you have any right mind, or someone else needs to step in and say, you got to be removed from the kids. We got to take some serious time. And I get it. If you went to the mental hospital and then came out, it's like, okay, like you're doing better. Maybe you're just trying to give that chance. I don't know. The prosecution's case, prosecutors accept that Lindsay had a mental health problems. They dispute those problems rendered her legally insane. Their central argument is essentially that Lindsay planned this. They point the particular of her actions on January 24th. She sent Patrick away. She gave him reasons to go to CVS, and they were also the restaurant pickup. They created a window in which Lindsay was alone with the children. From their perspective, the organization surrounding the killings demonstrates intentional and purposed behavior. They also emphasize evidence suggesting that Lindsay could function normally at various points despite her mental health difficulties. The witness saw her interact appropriately. She took care of her children. She went to appointments. She communicated normally. And then shortly before the killings, she was playing with her children outside in the snow. The prosecution points to not necessarily that she was mentally healthy. It's mental illness does not automatically equal legal insanity. Oh, yeah. It's a tough one. Because I'm trying to honestly compare it to Lori too. Because again, does Lori have some kind of mental something? Yeah. I really, you have to say normal people don't do stuff like that, no matter what. But this is where it has to touch the same exact critique is, were you actually genuinely out of your mind when you did the actions? Because again, if you are in a place of hallucination, psychosis, you're having all these things. It's crazy. He was gone from, what was it, 3 or 4? Let me go back up and find the time. He was gone from 5:15 to 6:09. So less than an hour by a few minutes. That's pretty crazy. And she was fine before. But again, I don't understand how the psychosis works. I don't know when it kicks on. But no, I know that. I'm not trying to argue that they're the same. I'm just talking about mental, because this woman was, at least from some point, this woman was researching and having these conversations. The question is, were you aware of when you did what you did? That is the point. And I understand that. What were you aware when you made the decisions that you made? And then she attempted suicide as well, which is, why didn't she just commit suicide in the first place? Why did she have to kill the children, go through with it, and attempt to kill herself and jump out the window? Okay, here's the defense's case. Defense attorney Kevin Reddington is arguing that Lindsay was not criminally responsible because of mental illness. Now, again, let's stop and ask this question. If you're not criminally responsible, you still cannot be in society, regardless if you were having psychosis. You would still need to be in somewhere where you're safe. That's just a reality. Once you've crossed the threshold of killing, because Sarah Henderson said the same thing, only there wasn't a bunch of research before where she was researching psychosis, but she had the exact same scenario where the voice kicked in and said, do it. Now, again, where do you have to be mentally if something were to actually do that and have that voice say that, where you follow through on that, like where the mentality is on that. And then, are you stable now? Is she stable in trial? I haven't turned the trial on, so I wouldn't know that answer. But if you're stable later, what got you stable? I don't know. Again, I'm going to do more research. Their theory series on postpartum psychosis, bipolar illness, and her psychiatric treatment. The defense portrays that Lindsay as someone whose mental condition is deteriorated despite repeatedly asking professionals for help. She did obviously reach out for help, so there's something there. The defense portrays that Lindsay as someone. Oh, wait, I read that. They aggressively questioned the treatment she received. For example, psychiatrist Dr. Jennifer Tufts, that's hard to say, Tufts, treated Lindsay's between September 2022 and January 2023. Tufts diagnosed anxiety and adjustment disorder, not postpartum psychosis or bipolar disorder. Yeah, but doesn't it depend on when she had the baby? 8 months. I don't know when she had her last child, but she was only 8 months old. Yeah, I know that. I know she's paralyzed. I saw that, which is crazy. In other words, being able to order dinner, use a phone, or perform ordinary tasks doesn't necessarily prove someone isn't experiencing delusions or psychosis. Yeah, but if you go to court and say something told me to kill someone, it'd be really hard to argue that actually made you do it. That's just where I'm having a really hard time sticking with that. Because again, I'm not comparing cases. I'm just saying, let's go down the line. Sarah Henderson actually had the exact same thing, said she heard a voice tell her to do it. She got out of bed and did it because a voice told her to do it. When it comes to Lori, it's God told me to do this because there's some reason. So there's a justification. So let's stop at what I'm talking about. The word that we're looking for is there's a reason why I did this. There's some type of third party entity that told me and greenlit this situation. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. It was this thing that told me to do it. I'm not even trying to dispute that she heard a voice. I'm just saying, think about that when you zoom out and think about all of these cases that go with mothers and doing this to their own children. It's always third-party entities that tell them to do it. So we need to look more into that idea of what that is and why that's the case. Okay, so here's something on Patrick. Patrick is one of the most emotionally complicated figures, and he discovered his children. He almost immediately afterward, he publicly asked people to forgive Lindsay. In a statement posted days after the death, Patrick asked the public to forgive Lindsay as I have. Patrick eventually has testified at a trial. He described that Lindsay is a loving mother before the mental health and said that she had never demonstrated violence toward the children before. Patrick and Lindsay are now divorced. Both have pursued litigations concerning aspects of Lindsay's medical treatment, alleging failures in her psychiatric care. Huh. That's interesting. This is all new to me, so I'm just digesting this as we read it. The suicide attempt is disputed as well. Lindsay's jump from the second-story window caused devastating injuries and permanent paralysis. The defense obviously views that part of the same psychiatric episode in which she killed her children, but prosecutors have challenged the aspects of the suicide narrative and raised that possibly that her actions surrounding the jump weren't necessarily what a defense betrays them to be. That matters because the prosecution wants jurors to view the entire sequence as a deliberate behavior rather than an uncontrollable psychotic break. Yeah, that's interesting. Is she regretful? Because again, I'm new to this whole thing, so I'm going to start doing more research on it, and we'll be able to have a better, more in-depth conversation. I'm sure there's some regret there. If there's any regret, number one, that's a big deal. But again, we have to have that conversation that when you zoom out on a lot of these things, there's people who are losing their minds. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what you do with that situation. That's very complicated. I don't know what you do. I don't know. All right. So here's what's happening. Today is the 17th. This is the really interesting part right here. So the trial began in late July. Prosecution spent roughly 4 weeks presenting this case and called around 70 witnesses, including Patrick, doctors and psychiatrists, first responders, friends, and digital forensics. Uh, Today, prosecution rested. Holy crap. The defense has begun to call witnesses. Among today's witnesses are, I saw Lindsay's mom. I did see that today when I scrolled past it. And they're describing a woman whose mental condition appeared to deteriorate dramatically before January 24. Okay. If that is the case, I'm just trying to go back to one main thing here. If that is the case, then, and if I would have, again, this is just me, but if I hear that, hey, I'm having real thoughts and I'm expressing this, I'm having real thoughts of harming my children, the first thing you need to do is remove the children. I mean, seriously, there's really no choice around it. I think it would take a good long time to get back to that. Like, especially if it was a reoccurring thing. Because again, if you are in that state of mind, I don't necessarily think you should be blamed for that, but at the same time, you're a danger. You're a danger. That's just that simple. It's just 1 + 1. You can't change the back end of that. But again, I can't judge because I've never been in that scenario. So again, I don't know. I'm just saying that's my first thought that keeps coming up. I don't know. So here's the question the jury has to answer. This is what makes the case different. The jury isn't primarily deciding, did Lindsay kill Cora Dawson and Callan? The defense acknowledges that she did. They're deciding something closer to, when Lindsay killed her children, did mental disease or defect prevent her from understanding the wrongfulness of her actions? That is really complicated. That's very complicated. If the jury finds her criminally responsible and convicts her to first-degree murder, she faces mandatory life imprisonment without parole. If she's found not criminally responsible because of mental illness, she does not necessarily mean she would simply walks out of the courthouse. She would instead be committed to a secure psychiatric facility. That's exactly what would have to happen. You'd have to. I'm sorry. What it is really dangerous to society. Are you going to cause societal danger? And that is as simple as you can make it. Whether it's a mental illness or not, if you're an unsafe person in society, then you should not be able to be around it. The trial is becoming a national conversation because of postpartum psychosis and the American mental health system. It's interesting because regardless of the eventual verdict, there is a documentation evidence that Lindsay was struggling badly before January 24th. She sought psychiatric treatment. She took numerous medications. She reported suicidal thinking, and she reported intrusive thoughts involving her children. That's, again, line here for me. She searched for information about hallucination psychosis. That's so crazy. So basically, legal insanity is the topic here. So we're not debating who did it. It's was she in her right mind? Let's do this. We're going to look up postpartum. Postpartum psychosis. So psychosis is it's man, it doesn't really have a you know what I mean? It doesn't have a it's just there's no diagnosis necessarily. It doesn't have this like this is what this is. Like it's a realm. It's a spectrum basically because nobody would probably have the same experiences in this point. Okay, what is postpartum psychosis? Postpartum psychosis is a rare, severe psychiatric condition that develops after childbirth that can cause a person to temporarily lose contact with reality. It affects roughly 1 of 2 out of every 1,000 people who give birth. It is considered a psychiatric emergency, not simply an extreme version of the baby blues, which I know a lot of times that hormone dip after a woman gives birth is instant. Like It's a lot on your body, and immediately your hormones go from taking care of a living being to absolutely having none of that going on. I mean, it's got to be a lot. The striking thing about psychosis is suddenly appear. It commonly begins with the first 2 weeks after delivery, sometimes within hours or days after later postpartum presentations can occur. Yeah, so that was my first thought too, though, is that usually is it not within the first 6 months, and her baby was 8 months. That's interesting. I'm not trying to judge. I'm just asking questions. This is how I get to conclusions. I ask every question I possibly think of. Because my first thought was the first 3 to 6 months is like usually the deepest part. I know it can take up to a year, so I'm not trying to say it couldn't be at the 8-month mark, but it would usually probably be the most intense after childbirth, no? Within that first 6 months, because that's when your body's really trying to heal. Then after that, you kind of start to somewhat get back a little bit more because your body's starting to regulate a little bit more after that 6-month mark. What does psychosis look like? Yeah, I've heard it's up to a year. I know it's different for each person. It doesn't necessarily mean someone could obviously look crazy at every second of the day. A person can have periods where they seem relatively normal or lucid and then become confused, paranoid, manic, and psychotic. ACOG specifically notes that people experiencing postpartum psychosis may have moments of lucidity. It's interesting. Symptoms can include hallucinations, hearing, seeing, smelling, or feeling something that isn't there, along with delusions of paranoia, severe confusion, disorganized thinking and bizarre behavior. Mood symptoms are extremely common. Mania, severe depression, agitation, or a mixture that changes rapidly. That is freaking nuts. Sleep is particularly important in a warning sign. Someone may suddenly sleep extremely little or essentially stop sleeping while becoming increasingly energetic, anxious, agitated, or confused. Here's an important piece of understanding cases like Clancy's. The person may not recognize that they are psychotic. Their hallucination and delusion can feel completely normal and real to them. Again, it just, I don't know. You can't really say if someone was out of their mind hearing a voice that they would be thinking rational, but I don't know. Yeah, you're right. She's trying to get help in September. And she was reaching out, which you have to acknowledge there's some kind of I needed help situation. So that is really interesting. Imagine genuinely believing something terrifying is happening rather than merely thinking it might be happening. Your decisions can make you sense inside that false reality, even though they can make absolutely no sense to everyone around you. Delusions can involve the baby. The darkest part of this illness is what most explain more accurately. Postpartum psychosis can sometimes produce delusions involving a mother or baby or other family members. And the ACOG notes that the condition can rarely include delusional thinking involving suicide, homicide, which is one of the reasons that sometimes postpartum psychosis is an immediate intervention. This does not mean that most people with postpartum psychosis hurt their children. See, this is where I'm trying to understand, because we're walking a thin line here, right? We're walking a thin line here of when does a mental health situation turn into the line of where you really don't know what you're doing. I don't know. But if a delusion's different, they didn't really mention the delusion part as much. I mean, I know hearing a voice is technically delusional, but again, if you hear a voice in a delusional state say, take their lives, and then you actually go physically execute it, it's hard, because how do you diagnose that moment of a thought pattern? Because even if you think it's real and you're not thinking straight, I don't know. I don't have enough information here yet. but it is very different than intrusive thoughts. Okay. So someone with postpartum anxiety or OCD can experience a horrifying intrusive thoughts, such as what if I hurt my baby, and be terrified of the thought precisely because they don't want it to happen. They recognize that the thought came from their own mind and that it is unwanted. Psychosis can be fundamentally different. Someone experiencing psychosis might genuinely believe something like, God told me I must do this, or something evil has taken over my baby. That's exactly what I was trying to say. That's what I was getting at. It's nothing like Lori. I'm just saying that the point being there is some type of entity involved that gets not blamed but used in that context. That's what I'm talking about here. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is that that's the similarity there. Is that there's some type of third party thing, right? The second situation involves break from reality, whereas intrusive thoughts itself does not. So they keep putting PPP as an abbreviation, but postpartum psychosis versus postpartum depression, they're not interchangeable. Postpartum depression involves persistent sadness, hopelessness, anxiety, exhaustion, difficulty bonding, and changes in sleep and appetite, or even suicidal thoughts. But postpartum psychosis involves something like say it right, Colby. Psychotic symptoms such as delusions, hallucinations, paranoia, and profound confusion. Someone can have a mood, symptoms, and a psychosis simultaneously. There is a current search and increasing connects postpartum psychosis with bipolar spectrum likeness. Wow. Many of the episodes contain mania and mixed states and severe depression with psychosis. Wow. So what's most at risk? The one whose strongest known risk factors is the bipolar disorder. I haven't done enough bipolar. I know there's different varying levels of bipolar, but I know it's either manic and low or very, very charged and high. And then everybody kind of has to scale between how high and low they actually go. But I'm sure there's more to it. Why does the bipolar matter so much? This is especially relevant because postpartum psychosis increasingly appears to be closely associated with bipolar spectrum. That's interesting. This creates an important clinical issue. Somebody presenting with severe postpartum depression or anxiety might actually have underlying bipolar vulnerability. The ACOG therefore recommends screening for bipolar disorder before initiating medical treatment for depression, anxiety when those have already been done. That doesn't mean antidepressants will automatically cause post. Yeah, but if you put a bunch of medication in one, plus you're already struggling, it's a cocktail of disaster because the medications do a lot to your body. That has to be acknowledged. That has to be acknowledged here. So you can still seem normal if you're experiencing it, like to everybody else. It doesn't, you don't go, like, just go straight like crazy Joker or Harley Quinn, like you're all of a sudden nuts. You seem like you can still seem normal to most people. You can go hallucinating 24 hours a day to nothing. Symptoms can fluctuate. Someone may have a normal conversation, answer their phone, prepare food, and perform other ordinary tasks and still be experiencing severe psychiatric symptoms at other times. There can equally be a caveat. Normal behavior doesn't prove that someone was psychotic. This is why retrospective of psychiatric cases sometimes are incredibly difficult. Experts have to reconstruct someone's mental conditions with medical records, communication, searches, behavior, and witness statements. Well, that's the point, though. There's a ton of evidence at this point that she was trying to get some kind of help. This was not something that just onset. It would be very different, in my personal opinion, again, at this surface level that I have of information, if she were to just have had an episode and said, well, I had a psychotic episode. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I just had a crazy episode and I don't know what I was doing. But there's a track record of her even searching hallucinations, things like that. But again, what was her state of mind in that 45 minutes that her husband was gone? I don't know. I should probably watch the trial. What do you guys think? Let's see what you're saying on here. What do you guys think about this? Because usually this is the part of the show where I will just take questions and we'll have a conversation. These are just blue light glasses, by the way. I've just been on the computer a lot. So Colby talks, the toxicology levels were low, not the level where it could make a person psychotic. Okay, so that's interesting. But if she was already having those symptoms, what triggered that? And she heard the voice. Those are the two main factors to me. It's the voice and the action after the voice. Like, again, it has to go down to, were you, and I guess that's the whole point of the entire case, is, was she in her right mind? I don't know. That's a very complicated, this is a very complicated case. It is. And usually when I talk about these things, I usually am at least would watch the trial so I can hear what's being presented every day. So again, we might have to do that as well if we want to talk a little bit more about it. But it's interesting to me for this reason, because mental health is something we talk about on this channel all the time. And then two, it's so sad, the number of mothers that are taking their kids' lives, and fathers are doing it too. So I'm not trying to make it about sex or something. Like, parents are taking their kids' lives. And again, I can't get over the fact that if there was a conversation in where you present that you feel that you are a danger to the children, I think you should be separated from the kids. And I don't know. I think that's the first thing you got to do. It's the first thing you got to do. And I don't know what you do for treatment. Again, I'm not in that realm. I don't have enough of, knowledge on that. But that's the first thing that's got to be done in these circumstances, is just try to get the person as healthy as possible. But again, if it is as it says over here, and the research shows that they can seem completely normal and there's no red flags, and then all of a sudden you have a psychotic episode, well, then there's no safety in that. There's nothing you can do. But there's a lot of other factors that I would like to point out that are in my mind, which is the hormones. If her hormones were low, thyroid issues, the mental state where she was at, those things all affect, where they all can combine. And then you start taking tons of different medications, and we know that there's tons and tons of side effects to these medications, especially antidepressants. Especially, let's do this. What are some side effects? I want to look this up. Hold on one second. Okay, let's look these up. I'm going to look up the side effects of Zoloft because I actually took it. That's really interesting. Colby have suffered with psychosis and spent a month in a psychiatric ward. It fluctuated over days of hallucinations with severe paranoia. It is now managed with the combinations of medication. That's interesting. I'm sorry you went through that. But again, that's what I said. I don't think medication's bad. I'm not downing medication. I just think if you start mixing medications, not everybody responds well to medication. Because that's what scares me, because we do diagnose and prescribe very quickly, at least from what I've seen. Okay, so here are some Zoloft medication side effects. Okay, I'm going to skip all the actual medical ones because it's like dry mouth and diarrhea. We don't need to know all that. Behavioral changes. So there can be suicidal thoughts or significant behavioral changes, particularly in younger people when starting or changing doses. Abnormal bleeding, low sodium, seizures, severe allergic reactions, and serotonin syndrome, which can involve agitation, confusion, fever, sweating, diarrhea, tremor, and muscle rigidity. That sounds like a whole slew of problems. What the hell are we talking about? Do you ever hear those commercials when they start telling you all the side effects? Some of the stuff is so crazy that it makes me want to not even take the medication. Again, I'm not trying to down and hate on medication or judge. I'm just saying it's just crazy to me that this type of thing is just These side effects are such a big deal. One particularly relevant what we can discussing postpartum psychosis and antidepressants is can trigger mania. Hypnoma is susceptible to people, particularly in those with bipolar disorder. So again, if you have pre-existing things and conditions, now we're just mixing a bunch of stuff. And again, it's very complex. This is a very complex diagnosis. Whew, that's a lot going on that could just be mixed together that could be causing issues. So if you stop Zoloft, this is the biggest thing. Zoloft abruptly, if you stop it, it can continuation symptoms cause dizziness, irritability, anxiety, nausea, sleep disturbance, and unusual sensory sensations. So it's generally tapered rather than suddenly stopped. Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? What is your opinion on this one? What is your opinion on this one? I haven't watched enough to really give a full opinion of mine. It sounds like there's a lot of complexity here. I don't know what are people saying the husband is involved here? Like he didn't, because I heard that basically you guys, not you guys, but people were saying that they were saying that he, like, the one detail I saw was that he came home and she was in the snow and her body would have been colder than it should be, something to that degree. And so I saw some speculation on him. So I was just curious what you guys were thinking. But I do want to say one thing while you guys are pouring in your chats, because I'm going to read your chats right now. I just want to remind everybody, and again, I don't think you need it, but I like to every time in these cases, is just to remember the reality of the situation. It's just, this really did happen. And as many lessons as we can take away and hope to improve the world and help other people. Hopefully, it would be nice to be able to see things like this, and the only thing you have is some type of lesson that can help someone else. I don't know, and hopefully shine light on mental health and that whole world. So, but again, it's just really important to have that reminder always. I just like to remind people this is really happening right now, and I think we just forget that sometimes. Because it really just is, it flashes in front of us, and then I think we just forget that that's there. Yeah, I don't know. I've just seen a lot of stuff about it. Because look, like, even I know this. I saw that I forgot what it was. It's just interesting because the first thing I heard about it is that it was a very crude version of it, but basically she had unalived the kids and then she jumped out the window and also attempted at the same time. But again, if the voice told you to just do that to the kids, did she come to a realization and then try to take her own life because of what she did because of the voice? Or did the voice lead her to also do that to herself? That's the question that I am trying to get at here. I don't know if that's been answered yet, if you guys know that. But if it has, put it in the chat. Well, I appreciate that, Tess. It's always important. I told you, I don't want to talk about cases without reminding all of us that really is, like, this whole family is destroyed forever, and everybody's lives are not going to ever be the same. So I don't know. It's just good to remind ourselves of that. Again, yeah, I mean, I want to say from personal experience, like, there's nothing worse than allegations thrown out there about you when you didn't do anything wrong. And it hurts. It really hurts to be thrown into it. And I get it. People are going to have opinions. Speculation's always going to come about. It's just human nature, but Oh, I did. But I did the majority of the research with you. And that was the whole point, is for us all to have a conversation about it as I read through it. But this is one of those ones I usually do research before, but this is one I thought we'd just do at the same time because it's been probably one of the most requested things that people have said in the um, chat lately is that they just want to talk about this case. So I thought it'd be important to, again, if I have a perspective, I'll say something. If not, I'll leave it alone. My perspective, once again, is if you zoom out, a lot of the cases that we've covered on this channel, just in general, that involve parents and their children have some third party entity that is blamed or talked about in the actual killing. And that's what I'm trying to say. That is just as important as any other of the other factors. Is that if you really look at it, we already read it earlier, is that there is God told me to do this entity told me to do this, a voice told me to do this, regardless of state of mind. I'm not saying that doesn't count at all, but you do have to understand that that third party thing is it's a big deal. So that's where we're at with it. That's really interesting. I didn't know she was even in a coma. Didn't say that in there. I'm learning this case with you. It's interesting to hear your guys' perspective. We still got 5 minutes, so if you have, I want you to drop whatever you want in the chat. I like to be able to hear. Yeah, again, all I ever say too is like it's just like with the Savannah Guthrie stuff. Is it Samantha? I'm sorry, did I say her name wrong? Samantha Guthrie or Savannah? Savannah. But her whole family, the whole Guthrie family, was being blamed. Like the whole first couple like weeks, it was like, oh yeah, you did this, and that was you in a mask, and it's just like you don't understand what it's like to go through it and have people hurling that stuff at you. That's all I'll say. I'm not saying people can't theorize. It's just be cautious. Be cautious. Again, that's why I'm not making an opinion. I'm just going off of what the facts are here. Yeah, exactly. I'm not giving an opinion. We're starting a conversation here, and then we'll probably continue once I do more research and we can do it together. I just thought it'd be better that way because I know most of you have probably watched the trial at some point, and I mean, I saw it was day 14 today of the trial. So obviously I'm late to the party here, but it's fine. I didn't think I had anything to say about it until I read through the initial reading over here. I didn't think I had anything to add. But I do think that, again, if anything, if I have nothing to add other than just to remember that this is real life and to take it with that real weight that it is, that's the best thing I can remind our community, which you guys know that, but it's good to say it. It's good to say it. And it's good to be careful with what kind of accusations you make against people and what you take at face value in every way. So I just think it's interesting because how does this keep happening? It's just too many beautiful little children losing their life to their own parent. But there's nothing you can do about that because the parent is supposed to be the guardian and the protector. And that's where I step in here and just say, what a broken world we live in that way. And just don't understand it. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, to have parents be the ones taking their children's lives. It's just overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's really interesting. 14 days is not too long. I guess it's not super complex, but I guess they're just, I don't know. It's hard to watch those trials though too. You guys know that. It's just hard to listen to all that stuff. But I mean, it is an important topic. It is an important topic. And I think, again, for me, it shines a bigger light on what we talk about all the time, which is the mental health. And for me, I'll give my last piece for the show today, but I just really think it's important for us to really be careful with our mental health and really take it seriously. It is very serious, and it needs to be taken care of. And again, I'm not against doctors or psychiatrists or medication. I just think we have to be well researched before we start jumping on medication. In my opinion, I think we need to do our own research before we start taking pills, and just be okay with what the side effects are. And if you start having issues, you really just have to work in real tandem with the doctor. But a lot of times, doctors are just going to probably have you come in. They want to, do what they do and get you out of there. That's probably their job. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not hating on doctors either. I'm just saying, it seems to be that you walk in and the first thing they're trying to do is what is the solution that I can think of to give you. And unfortunately, when you start stacking medications in any way, you are, it's a risk factor. It's a big risk factor, and I think it's actually dangerous. So, yeah, that's what I'll say. I don't have enough information to make a conclusion, but anyway, I hope this was good for our community. I thought it'd be cool to just do some of the groundwork together. I know you guys are more well informed in that way if you've watched it, but I do think there might be a few of us who, including myself, who have not really dove into the case at all. And so, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens next. If you guys would like to watch it together, and if you guys would like to start watching and streaming it together, I'd be no problem with that at all. I like to just make sure that our community is able to have the bigger conversations. That's all. And I heard that as well. I also heard that her husband was having an affair. I don't know. I don't have any information on that. But I forgot that was one of the other factors in why they were looking at him as well, because they said that he was having an affair, which I don't remember everything about that. But anyway, I appreciate you guys being a part of the show and letting it be all one subject today. I thought that would be a good way to do the research together. So let me know what you guys want to, if you guys want to watch the trial together, we can do that. I actually did, just so you know. I did reach out to her I want to say on TikTok. So if she hasn't seen my message, I don't think, but yeah, I have. I've reached out to a bunch of people, just because I feel for people, and I know a lot of people have very similar stories to me as well. So it's unfortunate, and so we're just trying to do something different in this world, which is rehumanize and then just bring perspective the best we can, and make sure we don't jump to conclusions, and just have a safer place to talk without judgment of each other. That's it. That's simple. So anyway, love you guys. Appreciate you. And I'll see you guys on the next one.